Everyone asks it, but almost nobody gets the real answer. When is the best time to have sex? Most people think it's just about when you're in the mood, when the house is quiet, or when both partners happen to be free. But psychology and human biology paint a much more fascinating picture. Timing isn't random. The female body is a masterpiece of cycles and signals. The mind, too, works on rhythms and triggers that quietly shape desire. And when you combine these factors, you start to see why some moments are far more electrifying, intimate, and unforgettable than others. The female body holds the biggest clue. Unlike men, who tend to have fairly consistent hormone levels throughout the day and month, women live in cycles. Estrogen, progesterone, and luteinizing hormone rise and fall, subtly shifting mood, sensitivity, and desire. Around the time of ovulation, roughly 2 weeks before the period starts, something remarkable happens. Estrogen surges, and this surge doesn't just prepare the body for fertility, it changes psychology. Women unconsciously become more flirtatious, more open to intimacy, and more likely to feel attraction. Evolution programmed it this way. At the point of highest fertility, nature nudges the brain with a spike of arousal, increasing the likelihood of reproduction. Psychologists call this the ovulatory shift, and studies have shown that during this window, women not only report more sexual fantasies, but also choose more revealing clothing, display more confidence, and find themselves more drawn to masculine traits in men. The female body, without words, broadcasts signals of readiness. But biology is only half the story. Psychology adds layers that make the best time even more complex. The human brain is governed by circadian rhythms, the 24-hour cycles that regulate energy, mood, and hormones. For men, testosterone is highest in the morning, right after waking up. That's why morning arousal is so common. The body is chemically charged for intimacy. Women, however, are more influenced by stress hormones like cortisol, which are higher in the morning. This means early in the day, women may feel less naturally inclined towards sex unless stress is low. By evening, cortisol decreases, relaxation sets in, and oxytocin, the bonding hormone, begins to rise. This is why so many women report that late-night intimacy feels not only more natural, but more emotionally powerful. It isn't just about sex. It's about connection at a time when the body is hormonally prepared to bond. Love itself transforms the timing of sex. Women's sexual desire is heavily influenced by the limbic system, the part of the brain responsible for emotion and bonding. Unlike men, who are often more visually stimulated, women require psychological arousal first. The feeling of being seen, desired, valued. Compliments, affection, humor, or even a deep conversation can ignite the brain long before touch begins. This is why psychologists emphasize that foreplay isn't only physical, it's emotional. When a woman feels understood, safe, and desired, her body responds more intensely. The timing of sex, then, isn't only about hormones. It's about the emotional context that primes the brain for intimacy. There's also the powerful role of stress and human behavior. Stress is a libido killer, and cortisol, the stress hormone, directly suppresses sexual desire. That means the worst time for intimacy is often after long hours of work, arguments, or emotional exhaustion. But when relaxation sets in, on weekends, vacations, or even after laughter-filled evenings, the psychological barriers fall away. Psychologists call this state-dependent desire. The mind has to feel free for the body to follow. That's why spontaneous intimacy during stress-free moments often feels better than scheduled sex in the middle of a chaotic day. Novelty plays a psychological trick as well. The brain craves dopamine, the neurotransmitter of excitement and reward. When sex happens in predictable, repetitive patterns, dopamine drops and passion fades. But when couples change timing, location, or circumstances, the brain interprets it as new, and dopamine spikes. That's why spontaneous afternoons, surprising mornings, or even unusual settings can suddenly feel more passionate than routine nights. The timing feels more electric, not because the body changed, but because the brain experienced it as fresh. Psychologists also highlight the importance of synchronization between partners. Sexual satisfaction isn't only about individual desire, but how well two rhythms overlap. One partner may peak in the morning, the other at night. If they constantly miss each other's windows, frustration grows. But when couples learn to tune into each other's cycles and compromise, timing becomes less about luck and more about connection. Research shows that couples who actively communicate about when they feel most aroused report higher satisfaction than couples who ignore timing altogether. In other words, the best time to have sex is partly biological, but also relational. It's the moment when two different rhythms align. The psychology of love adds yet another dimension. Falling in love changes brain chemistry dramatically. In the early stages, dopamine, norepinephrine, and oxytocin flood the system, making desire constant and timing almost irrelevant. The couple wants each other all the time. But as relationships stabilize, timing becomes more important. Desire becomes tied less to constant novelty and more to moments of emotional safety, relaxation, and affection. This explains why long-term couples may not feel the urge every day. But when the timing is right, the experience is deeper, more connected, and often more satisfying than the early stages of constant passion. Even culture and environment influence timing. Studies have shown that sex is more frequent and more satisfying during holidays, weekends, and even certain seasons. Longer daylight hours in summer boost mood and energy, while the coziness of winter encourages bonding and intimacy indoors. The environment works with psychology to shape when sex feels most natural. So what is the final answer? The best time to have sex isn't one single clock on the wall. It is a convergence of biology, psychology, and human behavior. For many women, mid-cycle around ovulation offers peak physical readiness. For men, mornings provide natural testosterone highs. For couples, evenings bring lowered stress and higher bonding hormones. For passion, novelty creates the dopamine spark that keeps intimacy alive. The truth is, the best time is when biology is primed, when the mind is relaxed, when the heart feels safe, and when two people's rhythms align in the same moment. Sex, at its core, is not just a physical act, but a psychological dance. The female body, love, and human behavior all point to one truth. Time timing isn't random. The best time is when nature, mind, and connection collide. And when that happens, it transforms ordinary intimacy into something extraordinary.